and should be live in a couple seconds. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first live webinar from the Nova Scotia Firefighter School. I'm John Cunningham, the director at the Firefighter School. With me today is Alan Abbas, Dr. Alan Abbas. He's a professor at Dalhousie and the director of the Center for Emotions and Health at Dalhousie University. And also Neil Henderson, who's with the Nova Scotia Health Authority, Health Services Manager for Mental Health Specialty Service, Mental Health and Addiction Service Program. Welcome. Thanks for taking some time with us. If you'd like to give yourselves a little more of an introduction than that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, no, thanks for having us this afternoon, John. We just wanted to, Dr. Abbas and I just wanted to acknowledge the work that the first responders and firefighters do for the province of Nova Scotia. So we just wanted to make sure that we identified that we appreciate it, and citizens of Nova Scotia appreciate it as well. So we just didn't want to forget about that piece. I don't know, Dr. Abbas, if you have anything else to add?
No, that's great. I'm glad we can meet, and appreciate getting a chance to meet with your members and people in training with you as well.
Great, thanks very much. So like I said, we're streaming live on YouTube, and we'll post it on our Facebook page after we're done today as well, so people can follow up. So first question, I guess if Neil, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the new First Responders Assist program in general.
Sure. Yeah. So we're offering counseling support for first responders in the aftermath of the April 18th and 19th tragedies. Our service would exclude RCMP officers, as they have a separate and similar program that's offered through the Operational Stress Injury Clinic. And the service is intended for immediate support for first responders. So people, our intention would be that if someone contacts the mental health mobile crisis line, that I'll talk a bit about that a little more in a minute, individuals, we would get back to somebody within a day and offer them an appointment to meet with a mental health clinician within the next few days.
Very good, thanks. Alan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the type of responses to traumatic events, and how do they affect the body and mind?
Well, there's different categories of response and ways that will tend to respond to acute stressors or acute traumatic events. So while one of the ways is to become quite more or less engaged, attentive, focused, mentally focused, alert, and tense, and more or less ready to act, ready to go and do things physically, run and fight kind of a mode. Another way can be getting more or less some sort of tiredness and shutdown within the body. It may affect the stomach, may produce like headaches and stomach upsets and tiredness, even depressiveness. And it's more like a shutdown response. And a third way is more or less fear, more or less being stuck in the fear mode. And having some concentrational problems. So those sort of three kind of categories of response can happen. A person can move through all three of those over, over hours to days after an acute stressor event. And these all have a different. They're all adaptive in one way or other. They all have a function. Like in evolution, we're programmed to respond to stressful events in certain ways, and that try to improve our chance of survival. So some of these are hardwired into the brain. But what can happen is that it's sometimes hard to settle that down after events, or if there's an accumulation of events, an accumulation of trauma, then the body and mind can be stuck in this sort of on mode and have more difficulties to settle down. But typically after like a few days, few weeks, with bringing around resources, with using one's own resiliency, one's own resources, one's own tools, and keeping functioning and keeping doing things, things tend to settle out over, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, until more or less back to baseline of tendency to respond. So those are kind of three main broad categories.
Right, very good. So, Alan, how does a person cope with these type of feelings and events after this?
Yeah, so there's different ways depending, for the two last categories I mentioned, being more like in the fear and having some concentration problems, and more like the body being shut down and tired. With those categories, trying to do things that actively relax the body and mind, those can be being active, exercise, trying to sleep if you can sleep, and gathering around social supports, family, friends, talking to people, talking to colleagues, talking to peers, people that have been there, just spending time or doing things that ordinarily will revitalize and invigorate you. Those type of things, the things that you found worked, are likely to be helpful. With a more tense and worried and on alert kind of mode, trying to actively relax is probably more helpful as much as possible. Now, sometimes that's easier said than done, but it means like trying to burn off the adrenaline is one way, like walking enough that you get a sweat on, like so you burn out the adrenaline kind of thing. So exercise is a good one on its own. Otherwise, again, also talking to peers, talking to friends, colleagues, get some supports around these things. Again, usually over a few weeks, these type of interventions, type of things that you just naturally do and just that make sense, will lead to resolving an acute stressor.
Thank you. That's why you have the treadmill next to you there to burn off some of that stress.
Exactly. Exactly.
So Neil, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about the new first responder assist program and the service that it offers, and how do we refer folks to you?
Sure. So what we would offer is we'd offer short-term approach. So it's 5 to 10 sessions that would be determined by the individual as well as the clinician that's providing the service. So depending on what their needs are, some people maybe 5 sessions is enough. Maybe others might need up to 10 sessions, or maybe someone just needs 1 or 2 sessions. So that's it would depend on the individual. The services are offered through Nova Scotia Health Authority, so our mental health and addictions clinicians. So it could be a psychologist, a social worker. We don't have any nurses on our team right now, but there could be a nurse in the future that would offer this service. And at this time, these sessions are offered via Zoom or Zoom for healthcare or via telephone. So we wouldn't, if people needed to come for in-person sessions, we could accommodate that. We would be practicing the physical distancing of 6 feet. We would make sure we were screening people for COVID symptoms. But that's, that is an option. So we wouldn't not offer a service to someone if they didn't want to do video or telephone sessions. In terms of how people can refer, we'd encourage people to call the Mental Health Mobile Crisis Line at 1-888-429-6167. That number is available 24/7, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's people answering those phones. You would identify that you were a first responder that was looking for some support from the tragedies of April 18th and 19th, and they would send Dr. Abbas and I a referral to be able to triage and reach out to the individual and offer them an appointment.
Very good. We have a couple minutes, maybe a little follow-up. Alan, can you tell me a little bit about maybe why it's important for people to take advantage of a program like this?
Well, the first things, as I kind of mentioned, to try to do is to just draw on your own resources, meet with maybe a peer support person, family, friends, do the things that make sense. But if you're finding that, your things aren't settling down, or that your body is really stressed, or it's really hard to sleep, or it's affecting your mood very badly, or there's a lot of fearfulness, and those are markers to reach out. This is what we're here for, to back up the supports you already have, in a sense. So if things aren't settling or they're getting worse, then let's reach out to us. That's what we're here for.
Right. And these can be cumulative, right? This goes on over a period of time with multiple events, not just a single event often.
Yeah, so so people that are early into their into your career, you might have some traumatic events from before in your life that get triggered when you're in a new one. And for people that have been members for a while, you might accumulate different memories that have a lot of emotion stuck in them. You know, I mean, ultimately, one part of trying to heal these things up and move beyond them is getting to experience some of the emotions that are attached to the memories. I mean, you know, so think about emotions. We're thinking about terrible sadness might be part of it. A lot of anger might be part of it, you know, and maybe guilt as part of feeling so angry too. So different emotions are there. They're all human expected emotions. We all feel them when we hear the news, and for you to be on the scene or on the front lines, you get a lot of stronger set of emotions, even because it's there right in front of you. Ultimately, that's going to be the way to not get beat up over time, is to keep in some contact with the emotions. And that's where it helps to have family, friends, peers, someone to talk to, and just go through these things so they don't end up an accumulated load over your career.
Yeah, that personal support network is vitally important to everybody especially in the first response community.
Yeah.
Neil, is there a time frame how long this program might be available?
Oh yeah, at this point we don't have there isn't a set end date per se, but we'd always encourage people to reach out to our provincial intake line to follow up on what Alan said around the cumulative events that could happen for a first responder. These events of April 18th and 19th could have been a trigger for something that maybe happened, a scene that they were at years ago. Right. So I would encourage people not to avoid that. And as Alan mentioned, take that opportunity to explore some of those feelings. So you could reach out to our provincial intake line at 1-855-922-1122. And that's a Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30 provincial intake line. But you could leave a message on the weekend and they would follow up with you as well. So, and that's for the Nova Scotia Health Authority Mental Health and Addictions programs province-wide.
Very good. Well, thanks very much. We really appreciate your time today. Again, Dr. Alan Abbas from Dalhousie and Director of the Center for Emotions and Health at Dalhousie. And Neil Henderson with the Nova Scotia Health Authority, the Manager, Mental Health Specialty Service, Mental Health and Addiction Services Program. We appreciate you taking some time. We'll also follow up and get some information to post on the Facebook page for further contact information and post the links again to how to get a hold of the First Responder Assist Program. Thanks very much. We appreciate your time today. And we'll chat again soon.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
You too.